Good morning, Lex. How are you?
I'm well, thanks.
We were looking a bit like stunned mullets then, weren't we?
Well, I can't
We've
see
got
a
such a
red light on
beautiful
any camera.
I know.
There's nothing recording.
That's all right. We can still chat.
Beg your pardon?
We can
We
still
can
chat.
do.
Yep,
I don't know if
definitely.
it's going live. We are live on? Okay.
Shows you how conditioned we are to red lights now.
I know.
Except this way, it's reversed. Red means go, not stop.
Yes.
How are you this morning, Lex?
I'm doing really well.
Yeah?
Yep. And welcome to Redgum Live. If this is your first time with us, fantastic to have you here.
Very good to have you here.
Yes. In a few minutes, we're going to do like a little kid segment.
Yeah, yep.
And then you're going to be using your guitar.
I'm going to try anyway.
Good. And singing as well.
Yeah. We're going to welcome the people that haven't ever watched us before.
Yeah.
No, watched is not the right word. Joined with us at church.
Yes.
We welcome you. We're really glad that you're here. And we know that there's people from around the world, we can say, around the world that are doing church with us this morning together.
That's true.
Yeah.
And in fact, some of those people had birthdays this week. So, Lynn, happy birthday for this week.
Happy birthday, Lynn.
Yep. And Karen, I know that you've had a little birthday. And Daniel.
Daniel as well.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, Daniel.
And Lindell, my sister Lindell, just big happy birthday. I think I have half our family, extended family, watch Redgum Live every week.
That's great.
I've got two aunties, Auntie Shirley and Auntie Lily in Brisbane, watch every week. Mm-hmm. And also, I want to really say a big Bairnsdale welcome to the new Uniting Church minister in Bairnsdale.
That's fantastic.
In fact,
Is she really well known to you?
Well, I do know her.
Like
in fact, she's my sister.
I know.
So Rosalie and John, it's just
welcome.
Fantastic to have you here in Bairnsdale with the Uniting Church. I think the Uniting Church is going to be really appreciative of what you guys bring to this town. So fantastic.
Yeah, it is good. I've got a few things to say before we move on to the kids, though.
Yep.
A reminder that we can gather outdoors as groups of 10. So church outdoors is really nice as the weather gets better. And in fact, the Old Station Cafe, they have 10 spots every Sunday outdoors that if you contact you and Coral, is that right?
Or even let Simon know.
Oh, yeah, Simon, who runs that cafe, just get in contact with them and you will be able to be one of those 10 at the cafe. But there's other places that you can go as well. We can make Redgum outdoors. It's very exciting. The other thing is, don't forget that if you want to be indoors for church, you could go to the other household that makes your bubble and do church with them. And the cool thing is, I was thinking about this morning, Lex, if they don't do Redgum Church, you've got the opportunity to minister to them.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's really cool. There's options that we can gather together now. And there's something else happening in the world of Redgum, isn't there, Lex? Do you remember what it is?
Trivia.
Are you good at trivia?
I am. I'm not too bad, actually.
Yeah, I always like to be the person that writes the answers down so I don't have to contribute an answer. It's a little trick of mine. Don't tell anyone. There's a trivia night happening on the 24th of October. So it's on Zoom and you do need to register and the details are coming. So hold firm. 24th of October.
Yep.
Shall we see what cool story we have for the kids this week?
Okay.
Let's go.
Good morning, and now we're into the children's time, and we are just going to read the Tower of Babel in Genesis 11, following from the flood and the past. To begin with, the whole world and only one language, so everyone could understand everyone else. There came a time when a group of Noah's descendants are relations and people that they know, decided to settle down and build a city which would be famous throughout the land, with a tower that would reach to the heavens. And when God saw what they were doing, he was not happy. He feared they were becoming too proud, too vain, and they had forgotten about God. So God made them unable to understand one another. Soon, a great babble of voices were heard all over the city, with everyone speaking and in different tongue and language. No one could understand his neighbour. Have you ever been like that? Have you been sitting with someone and not been able to understand? this is how it was for them. In all the confusion, the building stopped because they couldn't understand each other. The wonderful tower was left unfinished, and the people scattered far and wide, and the tower became known as the Tower of Babel. Also, we go with God calls Abraham, and Genesis 12 and 13. Abraham was a good man who trusted in God. God asked Abraham to leave his home, his country, and his family and go to the land that he'd promised to bless him and make him and the father of a great nation. And Abraham had a good home with large flocks of sheep and cattle, but when God told him to leave, he took his wife Sarah, his nephew Lot, and his servants and set out for Canaan. Along the way, God appeared to Abraham and told him, I will give this land to you, children. And Sarah and Abraham had been unable to have children. But Abraham was overjoyed with the news and built an altar to God and praised him. Later, Abraham took his family to Egypt, for there was a terrible famine. Famine is no food, hunger, and people couldn't have what they wanted to eat. And by the time he left Egypt to return to Canaan, he had become very wealthy and owned many animals. So those two messages to think with, and for next time we will have another reader to take on the next chapter. Goodbye, and thank you for the time.
I'm loving the input that we're getting from different people in Redgum, contributing to our kids' session. So thank you very much, John. Before I sing the song Rescuer, which is a toe-tapping, leg-slapping song, just for the record, I want to thank all the people that are giving in different ways so that Redgum can use that money for God's kingdom. It's exciting and it's above and beyond what's expected. And in the current climate, you think that things would drop off, but the giving is through the roof. It's really exciting. So thank you, Redgum, for your generosity and giving the way that God's calling you to. So let's sing Rescuer. It's one we haven't done in a long time. We haven't done it together live via screen, but we're going to have some fun with it. Let's go. He's our rescuer, he's our rescuer. We are free from sin forevermore. Oh, how sweet the sound, oh, how grace abounds. We will praise the Lord forevermore. There is good news for the captive, good news for the shamed. There is good news for the one who walked away. There is good news for the doubter. Hang on, I'm going to start that verse again because I'm being pointed at and I lost track, and we're going to do it again. Are you ready, Redgum? All right, here we go. There is good news for the captive, good news for the shamed. There is good news for the one who walked away. There is good news for the doubter. One religion failed, for the good Lord will come to seek and save. He's our rescuer, he's our rescuer. We are will praise the Lord forevermore. There is beauty for the blind man, riches for the poor. There is friendship for the one the world ignores. There is pasture for the weary, rest for those who strive, for the good Lord who comes to strengthen life. Yes, the good Lord is the way, the truth, and life. He's our rescuer, He's our rescuer. We are free from sin forevermore. Oh, how sweet the sound, oh, how grace abounds. We'll praise the Lord forevermore. So come and be chainless, come and be fearless, come to the foot of Calvary. For there is redemption for every affliction here at the foot of Calvary. So come and be chainless, come and be fearless, come to the foot of Calvary. For there is redemption for every affliction here at the foot of Calvary. He's our rescuer, He's our rescuer. We are free from sin forevermore. Oh, how sweet the sound, oh, how grace abounds. We will praise the Lord, our rescuer. We will praise the Lord, our rescuer. There's some good lyrics in that song. I really like what it declares that God is.
It's fantastic. I wish you could understand as you're watching this what it's like for us, because we stand in front of cameras, but behind the scenes there's all this mayhem going on, and we've got a few little technical problems this morning, and everyone trying to sort it out.
That's right. It doesn't matter. It doesn't stop us praising God, does it?
And just before we actually went live, Amy was saying to me, "Is it okay for me to crawl across the floor in front of you? Does it distract you?" I go, "No, it's fine. Now you know what it's like when things are going on behind the scenes."
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yep.
So anyway, it just is wonderful to have you with us this morning, and I think I might have a little conversation.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yes? Okay. Thanks, Amy. There's a 10-year-old boy, and he had been praying and asking God for a bike, and a week went past, 2 weeks went past, and no bike. A month, and still no bike. So this little boy decided he'd change tactics. So he stole a bike. And then he asked God to forgive him. Now, we know that that's not how forgiveness is meant to work. So how does forgiveness work? How does it work between you and God, between us and each other? How do we forgive ourselves when we mess up, when we make mistakes, when we make choices and decisions that hurt us, hurt others? How do we forgive ourselves? I can remember there was a drought here in Bairnsdale, and we had run out of all our water. The stock on our farm had no water, and the only way we could get them water was through our tank water, and our tanks ran out. And so we bought this big load of water, and it felt so good having water back in the tank. And I remember going off to church one Sunday morning and running the hose to fill up one of the stock troughs. When we got home late that afternoon, there was a flood everywhere. I hadn't turned the tap off, and I had emptied the tank. And the worst part about that was there was no one else to blame but me. It was me. And I couldn't blame Coral. I couldn't blame anyone. And sometimes in life, we do much worse things than that. I know I have. And how do we forgive ourselves? And so, what is forgiveness? Like, if I forgive someone and they're not sorry, does that mean they get away with it? Well, you ask such great questions. But before this morning we look at what forgiveness is and how it works, I actually want to go to a bigger question about why? Why should we forgive? What's the benefit to me personally if I was to forgive someone? See, we understand how punishment works. Years ago, I saw a little sticker on the back of a car. It says, "You touch my car, I break your face." And if you love cars, you would know what that feels like if someone damaged your car. We understand punishment. But why would we forgive? Like punishment, we know how that works. It's got to be an easier option, surely. So, what is the benefit to you, to me, if we forgive? Now, the Bible is not a book of rules. It's a book of stories. It's a thick book because it has a lot of stories in it, and it has the answers to life woven in within these stories. And so this morning, I want us to go back in time, back to the Middle East, to the nation of Israel, to when they had their first king ever, a guy called King Saul. And he started off pretty good, but it didn't last long. And every leader, every politician, we vote them in on their strengths and we get rid of them on their weaknesses. But see, Israel was not a democracy. You couldn't just vote the king out. So God comes up with a replacement, a young guy called David. Now David gets a tap on the shoulder, and there's a priest called Samuel, and he anoints him with oil. It's this thing they did back in those days, and it declares you're going to be the next king. Now Saul, he's not stepping down. He's heard about David. He knows this thing that David's going to be the next king, and he's insecure as it is. This makes him worse. And as the fear of David hanging around in the background rises, the desire to control, the desire to even squash David gets stronger and stronger. So Saul gathers 3,000 soldiers, and they go on a hunt. He's going to hunt David down, and he's going to kill him. He's going to take him out. Now, this is not the first time this has happened in the story I want to share this morning. And this story is found in 1 Samuel, and it's in chapter 26. And I'm actually really excited about this morning because this week I found in the story truths that I've never seen before. And that's what's amazing about the Bible, that every time you read, there's something that God can show you've never seen before. And I saw something in the story, and I'm hoping this morning that you're going to see something fresh that you've never understood about forgiveness through this story. So King Saul, he is after, done it before, but in this story, he's after David. He's got his 3,000 men hunting David down, and they camp for the night. And King Saul sets up his swag in the middle of the camp, and he's surrounded by 3,000 of his soldiers. And David is hiding up in the hills, and he can see down what's going on. And so he comes up with this brilliant idea. He says, I want to volunteer. And this is what the writer of Samuel records. This is the question he asks. As David's looking for a volunteer, he says, this is what David says. He says, who will go down with me into the camp to Saul? There's no discussion of what's going to happen. It's just who would like to come with me, and there's no discussion of what will happen when they get there. It's just who wants to come. His young nephew, Abishai, goes, Uncle David, I'll come. It's a suicide mission. But this young nephew says, I'll come with you, David. I'm going to come. Even if they get to Saul, even if they kill Saul, how are they going to get out of there? Like, you've seen the movies, but this is not a movie. This is real life. So they go down, it's dark, and they creep past all these sleeping soldiers, and they get closer and closer. And they eventually get to stand beside Saul, sound asleep. This is kill or be killed stuff, right? And as they get beside Saul, Abishai, David's nephew, he sort of whispers, Uncle David, I'll get him with one go. Just let me just drive me spear into him, and he'll never make a noise. I won't have to do it twice. Just I'm pretty good, because young blokes always think they're pretty good, don't they? And so that's his idea. Because see, when someone hurts us, when someone continues to hurt us, I want my friends to be with me. I want my friends to punish that person as well on my behalf. That's why we tell our friends when someone's really hurt us. We want them to be part of the punishment. But that isn't why David took his volunteer, his nephew, with him. It wasn't why he took him there, because, see, he didn't take him there to protect him. He went there with a very different motive. If he'd taken him there just to protect him, 1 against 3,000 or 2 against 3,000 makes no difference. So why did he take him? Well, I think it's because forgiveness is a process that we're not meant to do alone. And for some of you, that might be a new thought. And next week, we're going to have a look at that in more detail. But I want to ask this question of you now. What does forgiveness do for you? What's the benefits? Well, it brings healing. It brings healing from the pain. It enables us to move on. It sets us free from a prison. Even just the mention of someone's name who's hurt you, if you're stuck in this prison, your stomach knots up. You don't want to even think about it, because you're controlled by what they did, and it can be years earlier. Forgiveness actually sets us free from this overwhelming desire to punish someone. Now, just going back to the story for a sec, Abishai says, "Let me fix him. I'll deal with him." And David says, "Well, it's not our call. That's not up to us. It's if Saul lives till he's an old man, if he dies of a heart attack next week, if he gets killed in a battle next month, the year after, whatever, that's God's call. That's not up to us. I'm not touching him." So what they do is they steal Saul's spear and his little water bottle, and they're out of there. If David had killed Saul that night out of a sense of self-righteousness, out of this moral high ground, or if he had killed him out of self-pity, feeling like a victim that Saul has been relentlessly pursuing him, or if he'd killed him out of a sense of deep down anger and resentment, like David's life has been changed. He's been forced to live in isolation in the desert, away from everyone he'd want to be with. And if David had done that, David would have become as cruel and as capable of being as cruel as Saul was. By killing Saul, David would have put another Saul onto the throne. If you don't forgive, like really forgive, in some way you become like the person who hurt you. If you stay angry with someone, it makes you feel sorry for yourself. And this sort of noble self-righteousness rises up in you. And it makes you able to justify self-indulgent behaviour to the point where you can actually be cruel to someone else. You see it happen in divorced couples where people that once loved each other get to a place where they want to punish, and they will criticise and they want to hurt the other person. And sometimes children can be used as a weapon in those situations. If you don't completely forgive someone, in some degree, evil wins. It gets into you. It makes you harder. And it keeps those who you love from being able to forgive as well. It keeps those that are loyal to you, that want to support you in that prison with you. A number of years ago, when we were living in Sydney, Coral was asked if she wanted to catch up with someone she hadn't seen for a long time. But the problem with the invitation was that this person she hadn't seen for this long, long time had really hurt someone that Coral loved. And Coral had this sense of loyalty to this person she loved, and so she said no. She would not meet with this person. And as we've talked about it since, and Coral said it was okay for me to share this, Coral came to a place where she realised that that was actually the wrong decision. She was doing it out of loyalty, but that wasn't helping anyone. And so no one gets helped when we stay in this place of unforgiveness. When we forgive, it sets those around us free to be loyal to us, but they can also be nice to the person that mightn't have hurt them, but it hurt the person we care about. So in this story with David and Abishai, as they sneak out, they climb together up onto a bit of a hill. It's dark. And David yells out down to the camp and wakes everyone up, and then he says, sort of in the dark, "Where's the king's spear? Where's the king's water bottle? Weren't they meant to be beside his head when he's sleeping?" And suddenly they become aware of what's happened. And Saul recognizes David's voice. And David asks Saul in the dark, he says, Why are you still pursuing me? What have I done wrong? And then he says something that I wasn't expecting. He says, if God has stirred you up against me, I'm actually open and willing to hear from God and to put that right if I'm at fault. If there's though other people have stirred you up, Saul, against me, well, let God judge them. But there's no blame at Saul. There's no desire to punish Saul. And he ends up by saying this. He says, as surely as I have valued your life today, so may the Lord value my life and deliver me from trouble. This is the last conversation that Saul and David ever have. And those were the last words that David ever said to Saul. Some of you are thinking, I've sort of heard this story before, maybe. You can remember back to another occasion that sounds similar to this. But this is not the same story. It is not the same as what's happened, because there is a story very similar. And this, what I'm talking about today, happened in chapter 26. In chapter 24, in the similar story, Saul is out looking for David. He's got his 3,000 men again, and it's the desert. And the Bible records that Saul needs to go to the toilet. He needs to relieve himself. There's not a lot of trees out in the desert, and I don't know if you understand what the Bible's trying to tell us, but this is not like number ones. This is number twos. Like, you need some privacy when you're the king. And so Saul ends up going into a cave for a bit of privacy. And he's not wearing shorts and a T-shirt. He's wrapped up in lots and lots of clothes to keep the heat out. Hiding in this cave is David and his men. And when David sees him come in, David approaches him while he's doing his business, and he gets a piece of scissors and he cuts a little bit out of his robes, his garments. And when Saul's leaving, David holds this thing up and he waves to him and says, Saul, look at this. I could have killed you, but I spared your life. And it sounds like the same story, but it's not. And I'll tell you why. The motivation, the things behind it are completely different. The reasoning behind the actions are completely different. There was a teenage girl, and she came home one day and she told her dad, she said, Dad, I want to forgive you. And then she unloaded a whole list of all the things that he'd done. And she had this nearly warped view of how evil her dad was. Her dad wasn't a bad man. He wasn't a bad dad. He'd got distracted with work and hadn't given the full attention to his family at times, but he wasn't a bad dad, but she felt he was. And she said, Dad, I forgive you. And she unloaded this big list. And it so crushed him. It so hurt the family dynamics and relationship. It took years for their relationship to recover. And it only recovered when she truly forgave him, because she wasn't really wanting to forgive him. She just wanted to punish him. And we can use forgiveness as a punishment. We can use it, the words I forgive, to bring healing. It depends so much on the motivation. And David wasn't really showing mercy. He was trying to show how much better he was than Saul. In both situations, David says he can't touch the Lord's anointing. But in the cave, David, he does it out of this noble high ground. He feels morally superior. He actually says to Saul, my men wanted me to kill you. Everyone wanted me to kill you, but I'm too good for that. I'm amazing. I wouldn't do that. And it's this moral high ground that we can take when we're hurt. And as I said last week, if you feel superior to someone, you'll never forgive them. You'll never set them free. If you feel like you would never do what they've done, you can't forgive. It takes a humility to forgive. And as David at the camp, he had a different understanding. David got to a place, he says, I can't touch the Lord's anointing because it's not my call. That's God's place. That's not for me to decide. But more than that, he actually valued Saul's life. And when we walk through forgiveness, we actually get to see the person that's hurt us through a different lens. They no longer are this monster. We can actually value their life. In the cave, David thinks that he's done nothing wrong. He's faultless. But at the camp, he says, well, if I've contributed to what's going on, I'm willing to understand and hear that and put it right. In the cave, in this first time, David wants Saul to be judged, to be condemned, to be vindicated, he wants to be vindicated, to be avenged. They're the words that David's using. Because David sees himself as so good and Saul is so evil. But at the camp, he doesn't even criticize Saul. And when Saul says, I'm a fool, I'm such a fool, David, come back and I'll look after you and everything will be wonderful. David goes, don't think so. How about you send one of your young men up and they can get the spear back and the water bottle, but we're going to keep going. Because forgiveness and trusting someone are not the same thing. They're completely unrelated subjects, and you've got to understand that forgiveness does not mean you have to put yourself back into harm's way to trust someone again. In the cave, Saul accidentally turned up, and it never cost David anything. He didn't risk anything to sneak up and cut that bit off his garment. But in the camp, David put his life on the line. If they'd been discovered, David would have been killed. David risked his life to go down and do an act that showed unforgiveness and mercy and kindness towards Saul. He risked everything and he took the initiative. He wasn't just responding to something that happened. He actually made a choice to go down and do that. So what happened between the cave and the camp? How did David transform? Where was this process of forgiveness, this journey that he wanted? What happened in between? Well, chapter 25 happened in between. Between these two stories, there's another story. And this story is about a really pretty woman who's really intelligent. The Bible says she was intelligent and beautiful. And she's married to a mean man, a very, very rich man. And in this situation between the camp, between the cave and the camp, is a moment when David is really, really angry. He's really angry at this rich man because while he's been hiding in the desert, David came across some blokes looking after the sheep, and they needed support, they needed help, they needed protection, and David went after them, and he found out they belonged to this rich man. And so at shearing time, when they had all come together, all the shepherds had brought the sheep back in and they were shearing them, David sent a few of his men over to this rich man and said, "We looked after your shearers, your shepherds, when they needed help, so could you just give us a few supplies for us?" And this rich man, Nabal, he goes, nah, I don't know David. If he wanted to do something kind for me, that's fine, but I'm not giving him anything back. Go tell him I don't care. When they went back, David got so angry. Oh, he got so angry, and so he says, "Grab your guns, grab your whatever. We're gonna ride into the sunset, and we're gonna kill this bloke." And this beautiful wife of this man, this intelligent woman, she finds out what's going on. She didn't know anything about what her husband had done, and so she jumps on a little donkey and she grabs some supplies and she goes out to stop David before he gets there. And when she intercepts David's charge down the hill to kill her husband and everything that he can do in response and retaliation, she doesn't tell David he's doing something wrong. She speaks to him about God's purpose for his life, that if you do this, it's going to derail, it's going to rob you of all the good things. God has something significant for you. Don't blow it all in resentment and anger, and she got through to him. And she said this. She said, "Don't let this be on your conscience, this staggering burden of needless bloodshed or of having avenged yourself." When David was really angry, he said this. He said, "This man has repaid with evil." And he was right. But now, out of anger, he actually is going to repay evil with evil that's 10 times worse. He's going to kill him. The rich man just says, "No, I'm not giving you something." But now David wants to kill him. That's what unforgiveness will do. It will take you to a place where you will do worse things than the person that hurt you in the first place. And that's why forgiveness sets us free from that place. It took a very beautiful, intelligent woman to set David free from this punishment paradigm. That it would destroy David. And that the only way out was forgiveness. I want to finish with a personal story. About 30 years ago, we lost our farm, everything we owned. We let people down that we loved and cared for. And it happened slowly. When the fires came through, they wiped everything out suddenly. And for some people, you can rebuild depending on the finances, depending what's going on. But this was almost like worse than the fires because everything we had was. But it was as a result of a guy that I was in business with that did the wrong thing by us. I looked him in the eye and I put my hand out and we shook hands and made an agreement on something. And he went back on it out of greed and because he could. And as a result, we lost everything that we owned at that point of our life. I lost my dream. I lost my passion for what I was doing. And I can remember sitting at a table at my brother's Jeff's place, and some well-meaning Christians said to me, "You need to forgive." And they were right, but they were wrong because they didn't understand timing. They didn't understand process. And I can remember just grabbing this cup, ceramic cup, and I just threw it through this sliding glass door, and I just screamed out at the top of my voice, "But you don't understand the pain." I would lay awake at night and I would imagine ways to really hurt this person. Really creative ways. I'd love to tell you all the great ideas I had of how I was going to get back at him. Go forward 6 months. I'm driving back to Bairnsdale from Bega. I got a phone call and someone told me that this man that had caused me to lose everything I owned had also himself lost his own farm, his own business. He'd gone bankrupt. And I can remember in that moment I started to cry. I felt compassion for him. And it shocked me. And I realised somewhere in this process of this thing called forgiveness, I'd crossed this line. And I now valued his life like David valued Saul. I could see him as a human being and not as this evil, vicious person. What he did was wrong. But forgiveness gives us a perspective that takes us out of a prison and we can actually be human again. We can see the humanity in another person. And next week, I'm going to look at what forgiveness is and how we do that. But I just want, just today, for us to realise that forgiveness is the greatest gift we can give ourselves. It's also a gift to give someone else. And next week I want to talk about how that forgiveness costs you something. So I'm going to hand back to you, Amy, and I hope that beginning of this conversation on forgiveness is helpful. Yep.
Thanks, Lex. I really value the way that you unpack the scripture, but also tie it to what's relevant to us. I really do. I think you do a tremendous job.
Well, what I love about it, like this week, honestly, I had such an adventure because I'd never seen this in these two stories.
Yeah, no, neither had I. I'd never unpacked the cave part like that.
No,
yeah,
because I thought they were the same story, but they're not.
No.
And when you look into the reactions of David, they are so dramatically different. And what took place is that this experience with this woman stepping in and showing him that what he was doing was the same as what Saul would be, and that forgiveness would set him free, and it changed him.
Yeah. But he sort of went through an emotional roller coaster in the process. Like he got really angry in the process.
Yes.
And someone spoke into that.
Yes.
Yeah. No, it was fantastic. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It's a shame that no, it's not a shame, but the songs don't tie to that at all.
I don't care.
But what I do like is that it reflects on the heart of who God is. Yes. And because of who he is and what he does for us, his compassion, his forgiveness, we then can carry that forward to our relationships. So we're going to sing Who You Say I Am. And then we're going to sing a new song called Run to the Father. New for us here at Redgum. And it's that idea of we don't have it all together. And so we come to God in order to reconcile that. Yeah, it's fantastic. Let's sing. The highest king would welcome me. I was lost, but he brought me. Know his love for me. Who am I that the highest king would welcome me? I was lost, but he brought me. Know his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the sun sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. He died. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Oh, I am who you say I am. Who the sun sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, in my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. I've carried a burden for too long on my own. I wasn't created to bear it alone. I hear your invitation to let it all go. I see it now, I'm laying it down, and I know that I need you. I run to the Father, fall into grace, run with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend, so I run to the Father again and again and again and again. Oh, oh, you saw my condition, had a plan from the start. Your Son for redemption, the price for my heart. I don't have a contest for that kind of love. Don't understand, I can't comprehend. All I know is I need you. Run to the Father, fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs run to the Father, fall into grace. I'm done with the hiding, no reason to wait. My heart needs a surgeon, my soul needs a friend. So I run to the Father again and again and again and again.
Thank you, Amy. Do you know, sometimes when you're at the movies and you sit there and the movie's finished and then they start to run the credits and you sort of, if you've stayed to the end, sometimes they reward you, don't they, by show you little offcuts and little bits.
Yeah.
So on camera 2, right now, Chelsea, can you just swing around and put the camera down this way to our sound engineer? I just want you to see.
I don't know if you can see all of him though.
No, but go right down to his feet. Can you get right down to his feet? This is my brother Jeff in all his glory. Have a look at his little stubby feet there, you know.
That's harsh. Do you know what I like? I've been calling them stubby feet.
Well,
they
I've
are
got the same-
toe-tapping, worshipping feet.
I've got the same raiment feet. I have, you know. I just got shoes on. You like your feet, do you? I like my feet.
Do you know what I think is funny?
What's that?
My Archer, who's nearly 6, would be so excited that it's a camouflage mask because he has a camouflage
camo
vest and camo
marge, yes.
and camo, and he's like, we go, Archer, we can't see him. We only can see your arms.
That's true.
We can only see your eyes, Jeff.
So that little behind the scenes was a reward. If you've stayed to the very end now, you just got a little bonus, didn't you?
Now you're going to stay tuned for next week's bonus.
At Jeff's sack.
Don't fold with this mask.
That's true.
That's
yes,
right.
It's a good
practical
mask.
and fun.
Yes, yep. So on that note, we'll see you next week.
See you later,
Okay,
Redgum.
bye.
Bye.